Hello and welcome to the Organic Wormhole, episode 3. And of course, hopefully you guys know these fellas here with me. We got Carlton, the Pharmacy Seed Network, Medically Fit, Mr. Smiley's Gardens. How you guys doing this week?
Doing good, doing good.
Right on. So I'm curious, I've been trying to bone up on my organics so I keep up with you cats. And why is it that how is it that Mother Nature can be so complex and so simple at the same time? For the regular eye, it happens seemingly effortlessly. But once you start pulling back the cover and wanting to understand that process, the processes rather are very, very complex, and Mother Nature does a very great job of, just kind of blending everything together, all these processes, and it's just fascinating. But it's not straightforward. I usually like my hobbies a little more straightforward, X, Y, and Z. This is the game plan. And organics has not been that for so far. It's been a very deep process
Well,
to dive into.
some of what we need to understand as organic, everything is still a chemical process. So it's still a chemical breakdown, no matter whether it's organic or chemical. The process is still an organic chemical breakdown of materials. So if you're a organic chemist, you're going to understand this like it's nothing. But 90% of us, 95% of us are not even at that level of being an organic chemist.
And let me say, at the end of the day, you don't need to be an organic chemist to be a really good organic grower. All you need to do is understand the concepts and principles behind it and implement those and pay attention to your practices and try to make your practices match that understanding and to always be trying to grow your understanding of that. But there's some basic principles you can work with that can dramatically improve the health of your plants. And also in this conversation, at some point, we should talk about the plant health pyramid, because that's an important factor. Because, we talk about chemistry, right? And chemistry can get us up the first two levels of the plant health pyramid, but it can't get us to levels 3 and 4, which is where plants start really producing very high levels of secondary metabolites. And some really other interesting things happen as far as plant defense and as far as quality and yield. So that's kind of a can opener. And I don't know,
Well, my 2 cents on it is it's by design, Eagle. That's why it's works so beautifully. And in my belief, I would try to work with what the created order was versus trying to work outside of that. And that's just kind of my perspective on it. Is like what people call Mother Nature, I would call creation. And to me, it's a beautiful design.
Listen, God is the best designer of them all. And as humans, we try to think and play God all the time, thinking we can do a better, more efficient way of doing things. And every time we've tried, we've been wrong. Mother Nature still shows us what she can do that we're not able to do. We come close, but man, I mean, how farming started with conventional farming, and now as we're looking at it, how it's literally destroying the planet versus regenerative agriculture. I mean, we tried playing gods, being able, thinking we knew how to do it, and God did it right all along.
Well, and like with what you were saying, how it is a chemical process and certain things, but I guess when I put like my mind's eye on something in the soil food web, what really struck me, I guess, is something that was like an aha kind of thing, is the thought that the bacteria themselves are trying to glean what they need from their environment, right? They're really microscopic, so they're trying to reproduce. And to do that, they need calcium and nitrogen and phosphorus and all these things to reproduce, right? So some of the bacteria mine different things, and there's a lot of complexity to that. But in the big scope of things, they're just trying to reproduce their little bit of their environment. So what needs to really happen for that nutrient cycling, so if you look at it that way, those bacteria do become nutrient sacs, and that's kind of like the way Dr. Elaine explains the soil food web is like, so they're gleaning nutrients from the soil to build their colony, their population. You need something to come along that consumes those, because that's where the carnage and a lot of the, all that stuff inside those bacteria is a chemical process happening, right? Now you get something to come along and cut that thing in half, and it eats half of it, the other half is laid out there, or it eats the whole thing and poops out what it doesn't need. But those higher levels in that soil food web are what come along and actually do the nutrient spreading. The way that stuff actually works with like the mycelium as well, it's all in unison, you know what I mean, and it's all working together. But yeah, to me, it's like you can't. A lot of people, when they think living soil, they think, well, I added some recharge to my mix, now I got a living soil, or I put whatever the newest one was I just seen today, whatever. Anyway, but you put a bottled photosynthesis plus or something in there, and when you really look into it, all you're really adding is that very, very base level, and it's got to build on that, which that does improve things, and it is helpful and beneficial. But where the real benefits come in is in the higher levels of the soil food web. So now you have things consuming that bacteria, consuming that fungi, and pooping it out basically, and making a mess of things. And those are what the plants can absorb, is those kind of nutrient there. That's the release of that nutrient.
And let's also not forget that those plants can also send out those bacterial and fungal communities can use those amino acids, and that helps them build energy much faster too. So at the end of the day, the core center of this, the best way we can build soil, build microbial communities, build carbon, and build plant health and growth speed is through improving photosynthesis. And there's lots of different pieces to that, but like at the end of the day, that's what drives this whole process. You can't even build soil without plants.
Well, we need to also remember one thing, that everything is one. Everything is one. Everything works together for the better of itself. We have so many microorganisms in our body, more than living like cells and tissue, that when that's out of whack, how do you feel? You feel like you're sick or run down and not of energy. How do you think the plant feels if it's out of whack? Like it's not producing the right photosynthesis or the right sugars, and too much nitrogen will cause problems. It's like, we need to understand that. Like, that's why we try to do these regenerative living soils, where we're keeping living roots in the soil as long as possible. They talk about, even through wintertime, keeping living roots in the soil to keep everything alive and thriving, even though sometimes things are still going to kind of hibernate or not really die off, but suspended animation in a sense until they're wet and rehydrated and finding something they can start feeding on again.
Well, and the other thing that I guess I found interesting is that, the whole idea of like oxidation and reduction. We've heard them terms, and it's kind of a confusing, complex part about it itself. But the big scope on that whole oxidation reduction thing is an added, it's adding energy or it's taking energy away. So like when you get a nutrient in an oxidized form, it's gonna require energy for the plant to be able to use it. Where like nitrogen, I'm gonna say it wrong, but anyway, nitrogen has different forms it can be in, from an oxidized to the reduced form, which would be the amino acid.
From nitrate, yeah, it's like a 7 different charge state, different.
Right, and the point I'm trying to make on the big picture is it requires energy to move it up that scale into a usable form. So when you have nutrient cycling happening in the soil, like the bacteria being eaten, those bacteria are taking that up. They're adding energy to that to put those nutrients in a reduced form so that it can use it in its own body. So when you have that cycling happening through the biological process, it's actually gonna always be in that readily available form in the truest sense, you know what I mean? So it's gonna have energy in it. It's gonna be in a reduced way that the plant can use it. But in a big scope, that was kind of like an aha thing, because it's always like you hear all these different terms, but if you look at it like that, if I'm going from an oxidized state to a reduced state, I have to add energy into the equation to make that happen. It kind of makes a little more sense on what's going on, where there's energy transfer and there's an electron transfer that can happen there. So power everything, basically, you know?
That's where that like EH and pH like mix, they kind of cross with each other about reduction and the potential hydrogen. They're both about, like, one's about protons and one's about electrons, but it's basically the same thing. It's an energy balance. And plants are basically acting as the reduction to reduce energy into the soil and feed those microbial communities. So yeah.
Well, and so do we got to start then paying attention to the ions, anions, when we're doing this, or what is it we're really trying to pay attention to when it comes to redox, and the when redox takes place, because we have either a reduction or the opposite?
Well, it's a lot like pH. There's a balance point where you want to hit, right? And if you can cross the pH and the redox at the right balance point, then that's kind of where you want to be. And also, I've actually been taking a whole course on this on kindharvest.ag. And so anyway, if you look at the chart over time, you'll see that plants will tend to, the pH will tend to drop, and their oxidation state will tend to rise, I think it is. Anyway, very interesting, very fascinating, very tight relationship with each other. So we're seeking to balance that energy. We don't want to be too hot and we don't want to be too low, right?
So Olivia Hussan there's a 6-hour video you can watch on that if you feel like it. It's available through Advancing Eco Agriculture, I think. It might be still. But the gist of what I took away from that was he kind of referred to that EC, so the measurement for EH, the oxidation reduction state. He referred to that as like biological conductivity versus like electrical conductivity. My big takeaway from that was the fact that if you really can get the soil food web being operating correctly, you'll have better opportunity to have things in a reduction, you know what I mean, in a better state to be absorbed, because there's so much that's happening there. So like that was kind of the takeaway I got from his whole talk on it, because it was a lot of it had to do, even like he has charts even showing like where the state of the water saturation was and how that affected the biology to affect what was going on there. So it does play a role like that, but it was it was kind of
hey, but at the end of the day,
I can't hear you.
oh, how about now?
Yep.
Okay. At the end of the day, it all reduces down to that, that balance, right? And it goes back to what I remember John Kemp even way back in like 2013 talking about this, like biology is the trump card, right? So if we can provide a basic balance of chemistry in the soil and get biology in that soil, the right biology, the rest of it kind of plays itself out. If we get the plants growing in that soil, the plants feed that system, and it kind of like will balance and energize itself. And then, if we want to tweak that, we can do things with like foliar feeds and, other stuff like that. But
Well,
really base chemistry balance and then biology, and then we build from there.
so we all should also understand how the plant uses superoxide to create reactive oxygen species, which actually will eat and break down the outer layers of most of the bacteria or fungi so they can then utilize the nutrients out of it. It's like the same thing. There's a product called ASEA, and it's a redox molecule signaling molecule, which athletes take to help repair and recover. And it's similar to what the plants are trying to do in the soil. They're trying to utilize as much nutrients and recover using this redox system. And it's pretty interesting. Like both humans and plants use the redox signaling to help break down, like the redox in our bodies also help to break down like cancer cells and things that need to die off and reheal themselves. And that's kind of the same thing in the soil.
I was going to relate to that real quick just to kind of help illustrate this whole concept. That whole concept applies in animals and humans too, that like we use antioxidants, we use oxidation to drive our muscles, right? So then we have leftover free radicals, right? And those need to be scavenged back out because otherwise they do cell damage. So we have antioxidants which take those out. Now we have natural antioxidants and we have external antioxidants that we can eat and take, right? A great example of this is NAC, N-acetylcysteine, and glycine. Those two are the precursor to glutathione, which is the second most powerful antioxidant in the human body.
Did you say L-lysine?
NAC, acetylcysteine.
NAC, isn't that like a secondary oxygen? Like AAKG almost?
It's an amino acid. I don't know a lot.
So antioxidant and reduction are basically the same term, and they can be used interchangeably, really. So, and it just depends on the area we're talking about, really.
My point, that's a whole chain, right? So there's a chain of like antioxidants hand off to the next, to the next, to the next. So it's being reduced down through multiple living systems, whether it's in our bodies or in plants and soils. It's a ring down system. We're handing energy off to the next phase of life through that process. I'm done lecturing, blabbering.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I've reviewed all that shit to be able to talk on it, like take notes or something.
So how do we make sure all this stuff is happening properly indoors? And is there certain bacterias and whatnot that are, partial? I mean, we always talk about, inoculating the soil with, cannabis-friendly microbes, but is there, certain bacterias and stuff like that that, work best with the plants that we're trying to grow? I mean, or is it just a one size fits all? Or do like if you grow one certain plant, do they tend to colonize, or one certain bacteria or whatever kind of stand out?
Yes and no. So you have some biology that's going to live in the soil naturally, not depending necessarily on plants, but looking break down the matter within the soil. All right, puppies, calm down. Thank you. And then you have biology that's based upon plants and the exudates that they're putting out, trying to feed them. And there's different bacteria and fungi per species of plant. And that's why a lot of times in regenerative agriculture, we're looking for the most diversity in plant so we can get the best diversity and soil biology to happen. We also have things kind of quorum sensing, communicating, letting each other know, hey, I need some nitrogen. So the bacteria or fungi that is not breaking down the nitrogen but looking for it will send out signals to other biology, kind of letting them know they're looking for this, and they'll get it back from this other biology that's in the soil that's not necessarily attached to the plant. So almost like mycorrhizal fungi is one of them that they are not necessarily, there's endo and ecto. So the ecto is the outside, not inside. And these are the ones mainly breaking down a lot of the material. And so these other plants are, in a sense, quorum sensing, talking to them, saying, hey, I need these nutrients. Go out and get it for us, and we'll reward you.
Yeah, the microbes literally get nutrients at the behest of the plant via exudates. Basically, the exudates in the plant are controlling the microbial community's activity, population, action, etc. They're really amazing, conscious little beings, those plants.
So, I mean, by definition, from Dr. Elaine, there are measures to actually what biological levels are there, and you can, her methodology is to use a microscope, take the counts. It can be controversial or whatever, but, as far as like what needs to be in the soil, I don't know of anybody that studied it more than her. So,
Well, my issue, Smiley, is not being able to identify what each bacteria or fungi is. I mean, you can tell that they're there, but it's harder to identify whether they're positive for the biology, like, what's that, Carlton?
Wait a minute. Now we're entering the conversation. We've got to talk about how biology. That's the crux of the whole thing, is the environment dictates genetic expression. That's not just in plants, that's in animals, that's in humans, that's in bacteria, that's in fungi, that's in nematodes, that's in anything that's alive on this planet that we've studied thus far can change depending on its environment. And that's a whole fascinating subject, but it's something we really need to keep in mind because.
Well, then you go down the rabbit hole of epigenetics and how different biology can change the expression of each plant just by the stressors that's occurring. So that's a whole nother show because that's a deep rabbit hole.
That's a deep dive for sure. But
I'll give you the cliff notes, the DNA response to the environment, period.
Yeah, so we have a gene, and that gene is expressed in an environment, and depending on what that environment is, that gene will express itself in different ways. We all know this. We all grew up differently as kids. We all had different foods, different treatments.
Well,
let's
look at cannabis, for example. We all say we share the same clone. We all four have different grow environments. Every one of us is going to get a different environmental expression from our plant. And that's what people have a hard time understanding is plants in different environments will completely express differently than like me being in a desert and you guys in the Midwest where it's a lot of humidity and I have extreme dryness all the time. Like my plant's going to express differently than what you guys are. And people forget that sometimes when they're comparing flowers and, oh, well, that don't smell like mine or, things like that.
Hey man, San Francisco ocean grown kush isn't San Francisco ocean grown kush when it's grown in Arizona in the desert.
So we always contribute to those differences to kind of more environmental pressures. We never really take into account like what's going on in like living soil versus cocoa. It's all, we always talk about, basic nutrients and environmental pressures. We don't necessarily talk about the benefits of, bacteria and fungi and what they actually do to, help bring on the terpene profiles and, trichome production in general. That's a huge difference in the mix when we're talking side by side, apples for apples, and when we're talking about the difference in phenol selections. I mean, is organics a huge factor? I mean, when I talk about breeding and stuff like that, I'm always thinking about the pressures that bring out all the toolboxes in the plant, to be passed on in that future seed. So is that, something that should be done even indoors? It's just something that, widens the toolbox for that seed.
I'll say this: the old school breeders I know that I've seen and tested some of the most incredible strains from are guys that swear by breeding outdoor in the environment because of the toughness in the environment, and they do really hard selections. I mean, they'll put out 500 plants, and if they get 20 that are really good selection, that's what they go for. Like they're very methodical and very careful about what they select, and it shows in the expression that. And most of those guys that I know are organic. I know very few who are use hydroponics or any sort of chemical type nutrients.
Well, let's go back to the original discussion of super soil. Okay, so when we're creating super soil and we add or take away different amendments to that soil, changing the recipe, our expression in our plant's going to change. And people have a hard time, well, it didn't grow the same and it didn't taste the same. And some of that's, did you change your recipe? Did you add less of something or more something else? Because that will change the expression. That's one of those environmental stressors, the epigenetic changes that we're discussing here. And people sometimes forget that, like, oh, well, this time I used more sugars or more molasses or different biology than what I've used before. Well, that's going to change the expression of that plant. So you growing out 3 or 4 times, you'll see different expressions sometimes by changing your recipes or what you're feeding it.
Something as simple as your water changing and everything else being the same can dramatically change your results. Believe me. You got a well that fluctuates a lot in pH or gets flushes of carbonates and bicarbonates through, boy, that can just lock things up and change your whole thing altogether on you. I mean, like, water is the number one to pay attention to as far as quality goes, just right to start off if you're going to do anything organic. And even if you're not, like, anyway.
Well, I'll be fair and honest and say probably if you're doing pheno selection, I actually like salts and cocoa would probably be a more consistent level to test them all on equally. Just my thoughts on it. I know a lot of guys that grow with salts and do fabulous work. So I don't mean to dog on anybody, like, you know what I mean? Or have it be perceived like that. I just throwing that out. I think you can do it great both ways.
Fair, I wasn't putting anybody down.
I have to say that, dude. I know too many people that grow fucking real fire and not, and it ain't. And
well, if so, there's a video I watched, and it's like a 3 to 4 hour video of Brandon Russ doing an interview with First Smoke of the Morning. And I don't know if you guys have watched that channel or the interviews they do, but he even discusses in there. And I've said the same thing. I know a lot of hydro growers that can grow fire. Like, it's just a different way, that people are able to pull the genetics out of it, but not everybody can, and the same thing with living soil. Some people have a hard time doing it, so they don't do it because they don't understand it, and they fuck up their first run and, oh, I'm done. It didn't turn out for me. Well, it's a learning process. You have to relearn everything from growing from cocoa hydro to living soil.
I think part of the problem was that for whatever reason there was like this big push to like be one or the other, right? Like it was salts versus organic or something, like it fucking mattered. But the thing of it was like I forgot where I was going with that one.
Well, I mean, yeah, you can grow fire with artificial nutrients, but is there ever a sterile like medium? I mean, where there's no bacteria, enzymes.
Well, that's the problem, Eagle.
Something going on there. Even when I grew in cocoa, I tried to inoculate with mycorrhizae and shit like that, and tried to fucking inoculate. I figured it just helped the plant digest shit, ate extra sugars. There was lots of benefits added even to the somewhat of something living in the pot other than lazy, artificial nutrients.
Most of the time, salts will actually kill biology. And that's the problem with using salt-based nutrients or liquid fertilizers. That's what happened to the conventional farm and why we're destroying the planet. The other part is you're not going to get the genetic potential growing in hydro or cocoa using these salt-based fertilizers, because it's the biology that's actually helping the plant unlock the genetic potential by getting it all these available micro and macronutrients. And we know salt-based nutrients don't have a lot of those macros.
Mr. Eagle, can I get a screen share briefly so I can share something to help elaborate this point?
I just wanted to say this. What I remembered is everybody was trying to sell organics like it was easier, and I never bought into that because I never found it to be easier. And because you can't give somebody a recipe necessarily, and we can't really say that it's going to be necessarily consistent between even soil mixes. And like Eagle was saying, the more you learn about it, the more you learn you don't know, basically. Oh yeah, there you go.
Can't hear you, brother.
I think it might be Smiley's fan blowing me out.
Yeah, I'll mute.
How about now? Can you hear me now? Yes? Good. Okay, so plant health pyramid, real quick. You notice there's 4 main levels, right? We have complete photosynthesis, complete protein synthesis, increased lipid synthesis, and then increased plant secondary metabolite synthesis. So with chemistry, we can get to these bottom 2 levels, but without chemistry or without biology and active biology and active vigorous biology communities, we can't get to those upper 2 levels. So we can't defend against higher level pests, and we can't produce those plant secondary metabolites at the higher level. So at the end of the day, and I'm going to say it too, like I've seen hydro growers that can blow it away, man. I've seen them just do incredible stuff. But at the end of the day, we know those microbial metabolites are much more efficient at translating nutrients because they're not in ionic salt form. They're in assembled protein and amino acid forms. They're in forms that the plants can take in, and they don't have to do all the work to assemble. Like Smiley was talking about with nitrogen. Nitrogen coming in the right form, the plant doesn't have to spend like 30% of its energy and waste it to convert that nitrogen to make it usable. So that's the end of my screen share and my lecture. I'll put it back to you guys.
Well, it's taking it from an oxidized to a reduced form, so it's putting energy into it, basically. And it's already there, you know what I mean? That's how I see it, I guess.
Part of this, I think, is like the reasons for pushing or the organics is not necessarily that cannabis can't be grown great with artificial nutrients and stuff like that. It's more or less, that there is a following that wants to know that they're doing proper practices. That's like the food that they're taking. They want to make sure that the cannabis is as full as, lipids and everything else, flavonoids, because it isn't all just trichomes. You know what I mean? And organics can offer a lot more of that. But not only that is artificial nutrients, period. All right? We've already kind of at periods in our lives and history have drove the planet to where we were low on nitrogen. We were forced to go to science to kind of raise the nitrogen we had available. Now we're pushing the envelopes with phosphorus. You can't even put the shit in fucking lawn food, food and shit like that. So it isn't the fact that we can produce great food, or not necessarily food, but cannabis, with artificial,
Well, think
but we're running out of this shit. So why can't we turn to natural processes that produce nitrogen and are putting phosphorus, natural phosphorus that we aren't mining out of the earth or whatever? I mean, I guess the one is to be more better stewards in all for ourselves and everything we do. And then on top of that, it's a win-win. That's what opened the door for
well, if
me.
you go,
Our relationship, as you guys have talked about, with the plant. The more you look into the soil and what goes on to the soil is a mirror of what happens in your body, as you guys pointed out. You know what I mean? It's one and the same. You kind of want to, equal the balance out with the organics. So, yes, we can grow great cannabis with artificial nutrients, but, I think, organics is, something
well,
that
some of the problem came from after the war, where they needed to use that to the nitrate, turn it into a fertilizer instead of bomb material.
Yeah.
And so that's why we got forced into using fucking fertilizers. Before we were using manures, compost, worms, like raw milk. We were using natural, organic, carbon-based sources. And then
Well, the other side of that too is the organic matter level is really high in the soil. So when they first started using and applying the nitrogen, all they saw was this boom in growth, boom in yields, and like it was a real wow factor on a lot of that. But yeah, after like the Dust Bowl was when they started realizing the practice was going to be, and really a lot of that they almost run them big agricultural acreage of fields. A lot of those, when they're really irrigating and fertilizing and shit, it's a lot like a flood and drain table, for real. Like, they're flooding it with nutrient and letting it drain back and like drain off or run off and fucking. They were throwing shit at it like a flood and drain table, basically.
So how do we keep organics with the simplicity that we kind of talked about in the beginning there? I mean, it is once that you kind of pointed out too, Smiley, once you start digging in and trying to micromanage a little bit of the organics, isn't that where that's where we started fucking up out top? You know what I mean? I mean, we're at one point, and how do we keep it as simple and as simplistic as Mother Nature? I mean, is it just as simple as us stepping the fuck out of the way and just kind of, that's
So let's back up for a sec here. You talked about nitrogen and phosphorus. Let's do one and the other, okay? Phosphorus is definitely a conversation to be had. But nitrogen, let's talk about nitrogen. As Smiley pointed out, back when the soils were full of carbon and humic and fulvic acids, and all of those microbial communities were there, they had the capacity to buffer huge amounts of nitrogen and then release it slowly as the plants needed it. Okay. Now, as those communities died off as a direct result of that application, because I'll tell you what, if you go and take and put a salt fertilizer on a cut on your hand, you'll feel how quickly cells are dying because it burns, right? Now, before that, what we had going on was a nitrification, a natural nitrification process. And that's where nitrogen fixing bacteria are actually capturing nitrogen directly from the atmosphere. Let's not forget, the atmosphere is 78% nitrogen. So if you need nitrogen, it's sitting right there. And if you get those bacteria on the phytoplankton, on the leaf surface, you can actually fix nitrogen directly to the plant right on the leaf surface. So nitrogen is not a problem. Now, phosphorus and the way it's being mined and managed is another thing. But at the end of the day, let's remember all these resources on the planet are not disappearing. They're just being moved elsewhere.
Wait a minute.
Consider where we move them and why we move them and change some of those processes. That's my
Dr. Christine Jones talks about the phosphorus paradox, how we have enough phosphorus in the soil. We just need to unleash it and get the right biology to release it. And that's been the problem, is we're killing the biology off.
That's right. You know what? Actually, that reminds me. John Kemp talked about the top, one of the 2013 NOFA conferences talks. He talked about the top 6-inch acre of clay soil. Most clay soils has like 40,000 pounds of potassium, 80,000 pounds of phosphorus, some 100,000 pounds of calcium, and all kinds of trace mineral nutrition locked up in those clay colloids. And if you can break that clay colloid open with the biology and get it moving, you can unlock all that nutrition. And that, I have to tell you, I was on a clay farm at the time when I found that out. And boy, did that light my fire. And boy, did I see results when you got the biology right. And it even helped when you added a little bit of chemistry. Like on the clay, I used some calcium sulfate that helped balance the magnesium calcium in the soil, and that flocculated the soil. And then that let the biology in the soil. And once the biology got in, man, it was shades darker a year every year. It's just boom, fire. So those are a few points. I'll let you continue about phosphorus because you can definitely go in.
But that's the one thing, like when you're listening to like people like John Kemp, Dr. Christine Jones, Nicole Masters, Chris Nichols, Ray Archuleta, like they talk about this stuff. And one of them is like the phosphorus paradox. It goes back to biology. We just need the right biology to release the phosphorus that is there and not keep pumping phosphorus like we are nitrogen into the soil. And that's where we're having a problem, because even the nitrogen we're pumping in is not quite available for the plants to uptake. And we think, go ahead.
I was going to say, while we're on this subject, let's just talk about how that phosphorus, that chemically mined phosphorus, is done. What they do is when they take rock that has high phosphorus content in it, they break and crush that rock down, they mine it out. That is a tremendously intensive process, but just by itself. But then they take that and they run acid through it. And that's how they extract the phosphorus out of it. And then they extract the phosphorus out of the acid, okay? So that whole energy intensive process, like we can replace that entirely and sequester carbon in the soil and build soil health and build energy in the soil and totally delete that process and be recycling the phosphorus in the soil. So nutrients are not something we're going to run out of if we learn how to use those resources correctly and integrate them with biology. And like I said, it really comes down to concepts. It's not, I mean, there are specifics to the processes, right? But at the end of the day, it's concepts. And if you understand the concepts and implement them, you'll find tremendous results. And then that'll steer you to better and better results as you go.
I'll take a different tack. So is it not necessarily where we're going wrong is like the understanding process, but more what trying to guide or steer the soil for what we want? And I mean, should we just be asking for simplicity and the best quality as we can get? Because most times out of that, where we start to really spin out of control is when we start to get greedy with it and start to worry about yield and how much you can produce and shit like that instead of, just enjoying the quality of what you're growing. So is that where we go wrong is not the understanding, but the steering?
I think it's still the understanding. I think people are having a hard time understanding this concept because they're so used to what we've been taught for decades. And even farmers today have a hard time wanting to go from conventional to regenerative ag because they don't understand the concept. They feel like they're going to lose money when they're losing money by dumping all of this stuff on their land. And yeah, they're producing, but the quality, the lack of nutrients in it,
and the overhead costs, cost of those pesticides, the number of passes in the field, like I can go on and on and on of all the overheads that they're actually inputting to make that happen.
Them are all self-inflicted fucking wounds.
Yes.
They're all self-inflicted wounds on themselves by the input because they're producing inferior fucking foods that if they were to feed it proper organic, and let the biosystems take charge and let natural systems feed the plant, that plant would be more ready for pest, you know what I mean, IPM pressures and stuff like that. And it would be all around more healthy. There's a lot of reasons why. And not only that is the produce, we're trying to produce more because the shit that they are producing, is so covered in pesticides from just trying to keep it alive because again, it's so kind of fragile from being fed the bare minimum. But not only that is the shelf life of the shit is zero. So now they're trying to spray it with preservatives and everything else when, again, the same product in a great, properly functioning soil would have, and you stop me if I'm wrong here, a better shelf life without preservatives and need less pesticides, right?
So let me talk about this because I actually just interviewed a guy from a huge seed company today on my YouTube channel, and I'll be releasing it probably in the next week or so. But his name is Dylan Vaca. He's from the DeLong Seed Company, and they're working with I think it was $40 million of a grant, a $3 billion federal grant to stimulate regenerative agriculture. And I kind of quizzed him on how is that process actually being vetted, that those farmers are actually getting that money. And he explained the system to me and how they're actually getting the money. And even farmers who have been doing regenerative who weren't able to access some of this grant money have now been given a pass at accessing it. So from that side of it, it's growing. But one of the things that he said that is a big hang up still is consumer knowledge, right? So consumers don't know the difference between the grass-fed chicken on the shelf and the Tyson, raised in a cage antibiotic. It's a huge difference, but they don't know what the difference is. So they don't even understand why there's a difference in price there. And I, maybe I'm getting off topic a little bit, but I just felt like I needed to share that story a little bit. And I know a farmer that I was trying to talk to about like just adding some foliar feeds to his program to help improve his cows and stuff, and he would have no part of it. And the reasoning for it was because he was stuck into the seed system with the corn he was buying, the GMO corn, and he didn't know any way to get seed that wasn't GMO or to get out of that system. And they had him locked in a contract. So those are just a few pieces of the perspective of what's playing in the big puzzle from a farming perspective. I know we're here to talk about cannabis, but let's keep in mind that it's all part of that, right?
I was gonna say, Eagle asked the question of how to keep it basic, and y'all went on to acreage and some fucking like what?
So basic is just throwing all your fucking food scraps out in a pile. Let it fucking break down. Let it build up. That's as basic as you can be. What's Mother Nature do? She drops fucking leaves, right? Branches. Deer come along and eat and poop, and so do rabbits and squirrels. And I mean, that's as Mother Nature as you can get by using your local resources around you.
Yeah, I would say too, like the basic starting point, it would be trying to figure out what would be you consider a balanced soil. There's some differing opinions on some of that, and you can look into that. But as far as like kicking off a biological inoculation, I think the best way is to try to get a biocomplete, compost. There are a few sources. I know Crescent Soil offers some, and I also know Wormies GR has some as well. And those are the two sources I use. But inoculating like that is bringing in all the levels of that biology in one shot. So like, as far as trying to do organics from home, I think a lot of people realize that the volume of the pot or the size of the soil mass has a lot to do with it, and it's pretty difficult to do that stuff. As far as complete nutrient cycling happening, I would just kind of caption it like that. But having a complete soil food web really working, it needs a certain volume of soil, is my understanding. But yeah, doing it on a small scale, you may have to try to supplement with different things and do, some different measures to try to add stuff in whatever form or fashion. But the inoculation part, I think, is where a lot of people don't understand, because like, not a lot of people don't understand, but it's one idea is like, oh, I added this bag that has billions and billions of spores in it or whatever, right? But in the wide scope of things, there's like maybe 25 or 30 species in that, right? That little bag. Well, when you're adding a complete compost, my understanding is that you could have millions of different species, right? So when you're looking at trying to inoculate and see what's going to take in your environment, my mind is like, I'm at the millions of species, right? So that's just kind of the thoughts on the basic sense of it. So we are in Michigan. Wormies GR does offer that around. So. Oh, everybody muted now.
Yeah. So we should be trying to keep it simple, but it's how do we understand? I mean, living soil is very complicated. So how do we understand and make sure? Because we're not all growing outdoors. A lot of people that are watching are trying to do this indoors. So how do we understand and make sure that all the process that you guys are talking about are banging away, especially on a long-term scale?
Those answers are.
Sorry, I think I drowned it out or something. But long-term scale, like multiple different harvests from the same soil, is that what you're saying? Like,
No, just how do we keep, understand we got all these processes happening. How do we know that everything's firing away? I mean, are we asking the home grower to get out the microscopes and, do multiple testings? How often should they do that?
Well, if we're trying to keep it simple, no, we're not trying to ask them to do that. We're asking them to actually do research about what they're doing and to learn and begin the understanding of why we're discussing this and how to apply it. Because the understanding with that comes learning how to apply things. And that's what we're trying to get through to people is, hey, just don't go throw this or this or this or this on it because we say so. We're trying to get you to get the understanding of why we're using those, implementing those into our gardens. So it's you doing the research and not just listening to people tell you certain things. Because when you're actually reading it, sometimes you go further down the hole on a certain subject that you find out different information than what you've heard. Oh, well, I didn't hear this, and oh, that's new to me. And then you're able to now get in the conversation and help people learn stuff as well. Like that's kind of what we're trying to do. That's the understanding.
and as far as like testing Eagle, yeah, there are people that'll do soil biological analysis. You can send them in if you really want to dial that in. And all the time I spent diving down that hole, it really, really, really just became a matter of having a balanced soil. So like the chemical side, or having it do a Malic 3 or a saturated paste test and reamend that way. And then having water control, the moisture control. So, your watering practices had a lot to do with trying to reach the more complete levels of the soil food web. And that was where it got really hard on a small pot size, or was to be able to control that amount of moisture that was in there, because the soil food web's constantly reacting to that too. So that's where like incorporating things like mulches and being able to control the evaporation of the moisture, and having the right amount of aeration in, or being able to have it not be in a, full field capacity, right? And field capacity would be like if you added a drop to that media, the drop's going to come out the bottom, basically, is the idea of full field capacity. It's all the water can hold. And that's where your oxygen goes down in a lot of cases in that state. So if you can have the media's got to be able to breathe, the soil needs to breathe to establish that full soil food web, and you got to be able to control the moisture at the top and having the amount of food there for it to feed on as well. And it's kind of the basics of it. So you can get as deep as you want, spend as much money as you want, but it still is going to come back to those fucking basic things. And it's really, a lot of it's water.
So I want to clarify because I've seen many faces and different reactions when that was said. I want to clarify here. What I said was Mother Nature makes it seem simple when there's many deeper processes that happen here. That's why we're ultimately here, is to learn about the deeper processes, not necessarily how to keep it simple. I mean, ultimately, we would like to sit back and add water and keep it as simple as possible. But I think what we're ultimately here is, yes, and I'm not here necessarily, I'm here learning as you guys are laying it down. I've made that clear from day one, and I am taking what we're learning and digging in deeper as we go. And I thank you, all three of you gentlemen, for hanging out and taking these conversations deeper. And I think everybody does. Thank you as well. But no, I do appreciate you guys' conversation, and I didn't necessarily mean it to kind of be dumbed down. I just, at some points, I'm trying to understand how all these processes that we take so deeply, you know what I mean? There is a lot of many processes that go on in the soil, and how we understand this, because most people that are watching here are home growers trying to take this deeper, understanding how simplicity happens in their soil, you know what I mean? So I'm just asking questions as somebody that's coming into this as well. So I don't mean to dumb down this conversation at any point.
Ultimately, isn't it growing the best possible weed we can? And that's why all of us are down that rabbit hole, trying to learn how to do that and figure that out.
Yeah. And so I lost my train of thought. Never mind. Even that.
But it's a process, like plant physiology and understanding how plants work, from hormones to different stressors to soil biology as another process of how the plant interacts with everything. Like, the one thing we all kind of knew, and science is now coming out, plants are sentient beings. They can see you, they can hear you, they can feel you and sense you. They do communicate, they quorum sense, they give off different chemicals to let other things know. So we're learning that these plants are sentient, and they do have like a thought process and reacting like we do as humans. So the more we kind of examine like how human bodies function, the more you can even apply that to plants. I mean, our bodies have to use different hormones for key functions, especially the difference between men and women. And when it's out of balance, like, we have different complications. And so it's the same thing with plants. When plants are out of a balance and not in a homeostasis where everything isn't balanced, we have issues. And so we're learning how to figure some of these out and how to diagnose them and take care of them, even within ourselves. Like, some people have autoimmune diseases. Well, some people believe that's from endocannabinoid deficiency. And so if we look at like if we eat right and try to exercise and stay healthy, our body, not counting like frequencies, but the stuff we take in, we're less chance to get cancer from eating properly, eating right nutrition. If we eat these processed foods and high sugar content, we get a lot of diabetes, we get a lot of different diseases that are starting to take place in our body, cirrhosis of the liver, kidney failures. Like, think about the plant. Same thing. If the plant's out of process or out of balance with different hormones or regulations, without having the key nutrition, we're going to have deficiencies. We're going to have plant bugs attacking the plant. If we're high excess of nitrogen, plants are going to attack it, so I look at things as being a certified personal trainer for many years, how the plant works. And I've took those and kind of like, oh, now I can understand. Like, there's the ATP, ADP. I learned those energy processes about the human body, and then realized, oh, the plant has that same process and the way it works. And so it helped me understand these processes within the plant because of like what I was already learning about the human body.
Yeah, and let's be clear here. Those plants translate that immunity to the animals and humans that consume them. And so if you have a plant that has immunity, then anything that eats that plant gets that extra benefit of that immunity from that plant. And that goes down to enzyme cofactors, trace mineral nutrition, biology. There's a bunch of complex factors there. But Eagle's Point, let's go back to Eagle's Point. Like, we're trying to teach people and get their fire started, right? But, like the question is, where do you start, right? How do you start easy? Because like anything, it's a learning process. And that's like, we keep kind of coming back to that point. It's a learning process. So it's like, start out with something small. Like maybe you're not doing organics. Start out with, maybe take one pot and get some organic mix together and try it and see, and kind of experiment with it. You'll get a taste for it. You'll kind of learn, you'll see what mistakes you make. Maybe you'll have good success, but it's like anything else, none of us learned to grow overnight, right? It was a process. And so if you have the fire for that process, the interest in it, you can build it from there. Now, I have to say, I've been listening to a podcast from Kiss Organics, and they have some really excellent information on growing cannabis, and they have some excellent products. I'm not in any way affiliated with them, whatever, but I did pick up some of their nutrient packs, and I'm going to try those in my living soil crates in my new grow tent. And I'm curious to see how they work out. I've heard some good results from a number of different really good growers that I know. And if that works out, that might be an easy way for people to start. You could pick up a Bella Pro Mix, drop the Kiss nutrient pack in. Now at least you're starting with a basic chemistry balanced soil with some biology in it. And then from there, you can learn and grow. And, we'll see what my results are in the growth tent. I don't know, maybe it'll be a total failure, but it's always fun to find out.
So keeping it simple, going deep, like subcool and learning what super soil was kind of how I started learning. Like when I first started growing, it was learning DWC, hydro, trying to learn how to figure out how to measure everything, how to use a dropper or milliliters. And I didn't quite understand that at first until like Sub was talking about keeping things simple. Well, what do you mean keep it simple? Oh, I just mix a soil mix together with these nutrients, let it cook, and I just water my plants. What? That's simple? Like I don't have to keep measuring everything every week to feed my plants? I don't have to figure out what this EC and this pH is? I just water? That was keeping it simple. Going down and learning what the nutrients was the rabbit hole, trying to figure out why each one of them was used.
You got to become major.
right?
I think that's what we're trying to figure out here. Or I'm trying to figure out is how is the exactly what you're talking about here, boys. Is how do we've started this off with the super soil, trying to teach them to keep it simple as possible. But how do they we've moved on from that. You know what I mean? We've told them how to mix out super soil, let it cook, just water, but how do they transition into I wouldn't necessarily call that organic. That's a pump and dump. You know what I mean? Super soil was always a pump and dump. There was
Not,
never no like understanding of fucking microbes, bacteria, transitioning into organics. That
well,
you know what I mean? So that's what I'm trying to get like transition into or I'm in my mind helping to transition to how do we take that beautiful process that is so simple out
so
indoors.
just the nutrients. Yeah, at first that's what it was, without realizing these were dry organic amendments, not bottled nutrients. It broke down differently that later we began to learn that there's biology in there helping break the shit down. We thought it was we were giving it fertilizer, and the fertilizer the plant was, using it up. So it was a process of learning over the time of there's biology and they're breaking the shit down. Like what? Oh, and then at first it was just bacteria and fungi, and then we started learning all this other shit like protozoists and arthropods and
But there's still going to be a law of return that applies to it. You know what I mean? So, in some form or fashion, you're going to be having to get back to that soil to be able to keep taking from the soil. And there's always that. Even on the big farm scales, they're mindful of what they're leaving behind and how they're incorporating. So it's hard to say. That was like mic drop or some shit. I don't know. I didn't mean it.
It looked like he wanted to say something, but he didn't. So I was waiting, like, are you gonna say something?
And then I walk back in and sit down, and it's just quiet. I'm like, what I miss?
But that's Eagle. You're kind of right. It was a pump and dump of organic based nutrients that we started putting labels to it like organics and living soil. That it's super soil. It's supercharging the soil with all these nutrients.
Well, okay, but then so the trick is to keep that process going, right? Like keep nutrients in the soil, keep biology in the soil, keep living plants in the soil, and continue that process ongoing. As soon as you take the plants out, the energy source is gone, right? As soon as the energy source is gone, now you can't balance anything. You're just starting to go to reductive states.
Oxidative states.
I apologize and thank you.
So Eagle, you're gonna go back in organics again, huh? You still got that earth box, don't you?
Oh God, no. I'm a cocoa guy. I'm still helping. I'm here learning. I'm still understanding. You were the one. I mean, let's facts for facts here. You were the one that kind of opened the door up to wanna even understand how organics works in my system. I've always been a cocoa or a pump and dump grower. You know what I mean? And I'm very open on that. You know what I mean? But the want and understanding to what was going on in the soil I credit to you. 100%. You hanging out, doing what you do, definitely made me want to open up the door and understand what was going on in the soil, what processes were happening and why. And I still continue to, want to learn what's going on there. Am I necessarily a 100% organic grower or will go back to soil 100%? Not probably right off the bat. Will I someday probably get back to soil? Fuck yeah. I do appreciate the simplicity of it. When it came time to not be around or just like vacation, you know what I mean? Be able to water and be able to be gone for a few days. That's something I couldn't never do in cocoa. You know what I mean? To let somebody else be in charge. Period. If I'm not there, was easier. So yes, I'm fascinated by organics. I love what you guys do. You guys are very essential to the cannabis community. You have done for me medically fit, Carlton. You guys are doing exactly what you said, and popping ideas off and making people dig deeper into these subjects. You guys are doing exactly what you intended to do. You know what I mean? So, again, please keep doing what you're doing. I'm sitting here trying to keep up. So, run with it, boys. This is your guys' project. I'm just grateful you're doing it here. I've said that 100 times.
I'm just going to be straight up about it, man. It's a learning curve for everybody. As much as I know nothing. I'm learning new stuff every day, and I'm probably going to do that the rest of my life. I love it. And as I learn it, I just like sharing it with other people. And when other people appreciate that and enjoy it, that's what I'm really passionate about. That just excites the shit out of me. So glad to be here and glad to keep the learning curve going and to share and to be with other guys that I'm learning from you guys too, which is awesome.
Well, the problem is when I first started coming up, nobody wanted to share information, especially on YouTube. They wanted to keep it to themselves. They didn't want you to know how to grow as good as them. So nobody wanted to share information. And then it became people finally starting to share information in an open public setting when medical started coming around. And when I became a part of it, it was just making videos to video log for myself what I was documenting, so I can see where I was having problems, talk about things I was doing, and then it just grew into people follow me. So I was like educating everybody as I was educating myself, and that's what I enjoyed about it. Is like it helped me go down more of a rabbit hole trying to understand the plant. One of my roommates, she had her master's, she actually had her master's in plant physiology and botany. And so her and I would talk a lot about it, and it was great. I love those intellectual conversations. So I tried to find more people that were talking that way. And that's why there are certain groups and people I started following, like the brown guy 420 years ago, when he was around, because he was one of the few organic guys, and there was a few more that popped up and were around, and there wasn't a lot of us. And so it helped me kind of try to help educate people on the information I was reading and going over and listening to. Because, dude, if you really understood the amount of video lectures or documents that I've read, I would have a PhD. I'm not going to pay for schooling and go get a PhD and waste thousands of dollars to get that when I can just keep educating myself. There's nothing wrong with you looking up the information yourself, getting into conversations with people like us or people more educated than us that have deeper understandings. And that's where you kind of start to get some of the knowledge, because it takes years to build. It just don't happen overnight. I mean, if you're going to school to get a degree, it's 2, 4, 8 year, 10 year, depending on what you're going for, right? That's the same thing with cultivating. You're learning a whole process even as a newbie, you're starting off with something so simple for you that, oh, now you're advancing as a grower. You're wanting to try different stuff and do different stuff. It's like getting that degree. The more you get into it, the more you understand it. And that's all we've all done. It's got deeper and deeper into understanding of the regenerative agriculture side of it.
Well, you know, again, it seemed like there's a little bit of a spin out here tonight, but again, I seriously thank you guys because you know what I mean? I medically fit, and again, I'm singling you out because I'm singling you out. But I appreciate like the links you send me and shit like that. Not only it's the conversations that we have that do set off ideas for people. It's the links that you send. Like I seriously enjoy a lot of the links. Carlton, Smiley, a lot of other great people that watch the show send me links. What I enjoy about that is they're not necessarily ideas that are in my head currently, but when I tune in, I'm fascinated about. Not only that, is you've made me dig into another resource that I wasn't aware of. You don't know how many times you guys have sent me links to a little bit of a documentary or conversation or whatever about something that I just went, this is an amazing channel. Subscribe. You know what I mean? I've just widened my knowledge base by that much more. And that's what you guys are doing in these conversations. You know what I mean? You're firing off ideas, making us dig deeper. And I personally, just this week, you know what I mean? I've already listened to Teaming with Fungi, Teaming with Bacteria, just in hopes I could keep up with tonight's conversation. You know what I mean? You boys are keeping me on my toes on this project. I just want you to know I'm spending my days listening to fucking podcasts again, which is awesome because I get to listen to podcasts during my days these days. So, so you know, I thank you guys. You know, I do appreciate what you guys come on here and dump this information. What I am very much adamant about over the years, I've said this to Smiley, and any time that we have taken the conversation a little bit deeper is soil. This is the thing that really gets me a little bit is soil is amazing thing. Organics is amazing thing. But sometimes when people tune in, when I listen, I think when we get talking so big, so fast, big terms scare new growers, small growers. You know what I mean? If this is their first come in, it's a lot to take in. When you're opening the organic store and all of a sudden you're talking about redox and endovites and da, 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 it's like, holy shit. Am I ready for that? No, I'm going back to salts. You know what I mean? But I enjoy these conversations. So I don't.
Well, and that's why we try having different levels of conversation throughout the conversation, where we do get a little deep for some of the people that are following that are on that level or trying to get to that level. And then we know that we have new people following all the time that I have to dumb it down on my channel sometimes to get people to understand. And I understand that. That's why I don't try to use big words like, what? I barely can say that fucking shit, let alone want to put it on my fucking channel. Me trying to murder a word. No, I'll keep it simple. I'll try to dumb it down so people can understand a little bit.
Less syllables. That works better.
Well, and you know, there's a lot of channels out there that, you know, they're just showing what they're doing. They're growing. They're not educating. And then there's channels out there that are trying to share information, trying to spread different levels of information. Like, I'm going through a deal where I was fighting rusted mites and I was showing me battling them and what it took and how bad my plants look doing it. Like, when you're battling different pest infestations, or you have nutrient deficiencies and you have problems with your plants, they're going to look horrible and like shit for a while. But how do you recover? How do you get them healthy? How do you get them back to life? You know, and I'll try to show you most of that because I've already grown beautiful flowers. I do it all the time. But sometimes you have problems along the way. You run into different situations. And if somebody's out there at least showing you how to get through some of that, because you're going to come along at sometime in your grow, right? And if all these channels are not showing you how to battle this stuff or get through it to get healthy plants, where do people find that information then?
Yep. And I mean, like at the end of the day, like that's just so important to be able to see like the problem and how to fix it, right? Like, and like I just switched over to LED lights. I had HID lights still, and they were not doing the job for photons at all, right? And I had this infestation of aphids. So I just went over increasing photosynthesis in one of the videos with John Kempf and pulled out some photomag. They're under the good light now. I put some photomag on and I documented with video when they had the aphids on them, and they're exploding in growth now. And I'm going to see in the next couple of days if we can knock them out just with using those foliar feeds. And if I can, I'll put together a little clip and maybe I'll throw it up on Instagram or something, or I'll share it with Eagle and you can throw it up on here or something. But yeah, same thing, man. Like that's what it's all about, is like, how dialed in can you get? Can you understand all those processes and then learn how to use those processes to fix problems?
And I know Smiley over there, he's fought some russet or some root aphids, or what'd you fight a while back?
Oh, I got my root feeding nematode badge. I've had my russet mite badge. I got my aphid badge. I got my spider mite badge. I've had my powdery mildew badge. I've had my botrytis badge. I mean, I don't know. Right? I'm trying to think of any other ones.
Because that's what it's like. It's like you're earning badges, learning how to deal with this stuff as you get it. And that's one thing people aren't talking about. Like, I'm not afraid to.
You got all the badges, Smiley. That's impressive, my friend.
I don't know about all of them. I hope I haven't had the broad mites or the. Now I better knock on wood. Or the fucking Cheddar Bob had some crazy thing. I can't forget what it was. Made like a scab or something. I forget what it was. Maybe that was the name of it. Yeah, there's some ones that I haven't had them all. I have had the Septoria too. That's and what's the other one with it starts with F?
Well, and you know, Smiley, you don't see a lot of people really talking about the battles of that on here. And there's like thousands of growers on YouTube. Not a lot of them are talking about, hey, I got this. I'm getting my badge. I'm learning how to battle this right now, you know. Or if you're looking for recommendations on how to battle it, like, it's hard to find it. Like, you can find different articles about, but you don't have people really showing you in their videos what they're dealing with and what they're combating or why they're using these products, you know. And I think that's what makes it interesting for people to learn how to do this prevention, IPM, or different predator bugs, and, you know, different techniques of foliar sprays to help fight off pests. And
Yeah, that's one thing I'm actually planning upcoming on my channel now that I got the new grow lab set up. I want to take like, side by side, good soil, not good soil, grow two plants out, show how the one is, showing disease or whatever, like with tomatoes, and then like correct and bring it back.
John Faust just did a video from CSU Pueblo, Colorado, talking about that, showing plants in research on YouTube. So you can watch this video documenting, hey, these plants are using this or this, and we've given less, and like how the plant is growing, and with less nutrients or more nutrients and how it reacts. So there's even video documents on YouTube so people can see as well. Eagle, are we all smoking enough for you tonight?
No.
Yeah, you meant Bob Faust, Robert Faust.
No, I think it's John Faust. Let me look up the video. It should be in. Hang on. Let me look this up. I thought I even sent you the link, Smiley.
You might have. I've been a bit busy lately, so
Okay.
there's much time on there. Come back from vacation and then been on my ass all work and shit.
Okay.
So, I mean, when is it though? When do you guys decide that enough's enough with the soil? When troubleshooting is enough? Is it root problems? Root pests? Is that when you guys enough is enough with the living soil? I mean,
The roots suck. Yes.
I mean, how you grow indoors in pots? How are you keeping these things? How are all these systems working? I mean, how are you?
I've been kind of flipping the soils out, like what you were saying with the super soil, and that was due to fighting root problems. So, like those root feeding nematodes. I don't know, man. The fucking things are. I don't know. I don't understand it, but they seem to be still around, and I've been flipping out the soil now, trying to get rid of them and trying not to reuse the soil. So, but. Yeah, the root feeding fucking pests suck. I've never had root feeding aphids or whatever, but I've seen photos and they look like they suck too.
Smiley.
Oh, so it was Jim Faust, Dr. Jim Faust. I'm posting the link in chat now.
Smiley, I came across something about that nematode thing on the Kiss Organics podcast. I think it's in the title on it, but take a look if you haven't heard that yet. That might give you a pointer on. I know they said something about how to deal with a nematode issue, so it might be worth checking out.
Neem meal will get rid of bad nematodes.
Okay,
That's one of them. Yep.
That's what I like for all sorts of stuff, including improving just overall plant health. That little bit of neem oil in the meal makes a huge difference. That really provides a nice protein amino acid base profile in the soil. Man, it really does amazing things, and great for suppressing fungus, gnats, and that kind of stuff. If you've been overwatering too much, it helps with that as well.
See, that's one of the things that with battling the rusted mites that I've used neem oil. A lot of people are concerned about azadirachtin in it, and it's not a concern. But that's another discussion. But what neem does is it prevents the bug from wanting to eat. It messes with their ectoskeleton so they can't molt. It fucks with their reproductive organs so they can't breed. And it pretty much suffocates some of them.
Terrible microbes in the soil. So what do you do after you've treated with neem and you've killed out a lot of the bacteria, microbes, fungus in the soil? How do you re-inoculate?
It's not killing it in the soil because I'm not spraying the soil. I'm spraying the plant. I'm using stuff in the soil such as sulfur, micronized sulfur. What is it? Bavaria bassiana. Things like that, the fungus that will attack different mites and aphids. So I treat the soil a little differently than I treat the plant. The plant can handle a neem treatment where the soil, it's a little harder on it, but I still use neem seed meal in my soil.
I like the meal a lot better than the oil. The oil is great if you're doing like organic orchards where you're working with like big trees, heavy plants like that that have deep, deep root soil masses and work with really heavy fungal masses. But with plants where you're working with more a bacterial fungal balance, it's that neem cake is nice because it provides some nitrogen and some nutrients along with the neem action. And let's not forget the neem also disrupts the reproductive cycle of those pests.
So
They can't reproduce in your grow room. So that's a huge factor. So that's why when you use neem, sometimes you don't see results for a month or two.
but keep in mind, we
Doesn't
never
either.
want to spray it during flower, okay? Because a lot of people, they still want to spray their plants in flower and thinking it's going to be okay. And really, it's not. And people should really understand this. A lot of people will still spray stuff. Oh, I can spray up to a week and before I harvest, and this product says I can't. It's the residues that are still left on it. Oh, you're doing a bud wash? Well, you're still getting some residue on it. It's not fully there. Like, come on, people.
You might as well get a contaminated vape and smoke vitamin E.
But I just wanted to add too, like whatever your foliar you're spraying on the plant is definitely hitting the soil surface. So there is interaction there. It's not, separated. It is one and the same.
Yeah, the phyllosphere around the leaf surface.
Well, even just the overspray, what drips off it. I mean, there's whatever your foliar you're spraying is hitting the soil.
Yeah.
Let's go back to our soil concept for a minute, though, because if we're talking about living soil and we're covering that soil with living plants or mulches, then that mulch is going to provide a buffer. And if we're getting that biology right in that top layer, that detritosphere, right, that little layer there, I wonder if we're consuming some of that in there, and maybe that's part of what helps buffer it. Just a thought, not necessarily.
Well, mulch would definitely help, yeah. But I mean, I'm just, it does rain down, and you should consider that. So, like, whatever you're spraying.
Well, that's what I'm saying too. Is a healthy plant 9 times out of 10, IPM should just be a general thing. When you're usually when you're reaching for neem, other than an occasional, is when you have an infestation. 9 times out of 10, when you have an infestation, in my case, I'm stripping as much off the plant as possible, then spraying heavy with a neem, and in some cases, a soil drench. That was kind of the initial question. When do you give up on, an organic or living, system? When some type of root infestation happens? You said you've got your badge there. At one point, would it have been easier to dump it and start over versus just hitting the soil with all kinds of shit and just, disrupting all the fucking functions that we're just talked about? You know what I mean? And neem will do that, disrupt. That's always been my practice. Anytime I've had to root drench, I've always tried to re-inoculate the soil with something, a tea, fucking microbes, something. But that was the question. When do you give up? I mean, there's testing that can tell you what you need to input, but that doesn't necessarily tell you how to feed the systems that we've talked about. How it's more or less what the plant needs in the end.
Compaction is one reason I've had to give up on some. So after 3-4 runs, the peat media was just breaking down, and as it gets smaller and smaller fiber, even in the cocoa will do this too, but the smaller the fiber, the more compaction you're going to have, and it's going to become to where it doesn't hold enough oxygen because it's so compacted. So when you water it, just the plants don't grow.
In that situation, wouldn't there be some that would say, "Oh, just more worms"? You know what I mean? You need more
work like that, though.
I know it, but this is, you know what I mean? People hear and jump on. You know what I mean? That's why we're trying to.
So here,
understand. right?
For a sec. Let's back up for a sec, because at the end of the day, it's about that balance, like we're talking about, right? If you get too far out of balance, you're probably better to abandon that soil and that plant and start with a fresh batch. It's something I'm super guilty of myself. I never want to abandon a plant. I'll carry a plant out to the nth degree. I got like a fig tree that's a clone in the grow tent right now that I should have thrown out 3 months ago, but it's still sitting in there because I haven't chucked it yet. I will, but so there is a point of like, if the balance is so far tipped out that you can't correct it, you're probably better off to ditch it and start fresh and take your lessons from your mistakes and don't make those mistakes again if you can help it. That's my 2 cents.
I'm the opposite. If I got compacted soil, I'm going to use some gypsum to kind of help loosen it up. I'm going to get some different rock, like lava rock, try to start mixing it in and letting it get in. I'm going to try to get some cover crop on it to get roots down in there as far as I can to help get it in and break it up. If I have a bad batch, hey, come on. If I have a bad batch of soil, I may dump it in my compost, but not fully throw it out. So that way I'm still allowing biology to keep breaking it down if it's too hot, or, if I got a hugelkultur that I'm starting that I've just been throwing like so much green produce in my house because I already have too much brown to green ratio. So I've got to throw some shit out anyhow to mix. So me throwing a little bit of soil on that, it's not going to harm nothing.
I do that too. I say I throw it out from the container, right? But that's not throw it out. I throw it out, it goes to another garden bed, a compost pile, the next level down, a process that it can add to and gain benefit from. And that's like part of regenerative, right? Like every time we can reuse something and put it back in the soil, back on the land, back in the biology, back in the system, then that's another resource we don't have to mine like phosphorus and bring here and put down.
So again, you kind of confused me a little bit medically. So again, you're talking about batches and shit like that. We're talking about living soils, living soil food web. You know what I mean? So when you're tearing it apart, and you even said, when you're fighting compaction, how are you getting the gypsum in without remixing the back? And in fact, by remixing, you've already solved the compaction problem.
Hold on, because even in regenerative agriculture in the field, sometimes there's a reason to till. Sometimes you want to change the oxidation reduction state of a piece of soil to get a certain crop established in it. And that's perfectly okay to do within a living soil system and too, right? Like if we need to apply some tillage to get some aeration in there and to get a crop established, that's okay in my book. Now, it's a different thing if you're just like we were talking about with the subcool soil, where you make a batch, you run it through, you throw it out, you make another batch, you throw it out. That's a whole different thing than what we're trying to do here. And again, with biology and such.
Well, they were talking today, and like that's what I'm trying to understand here. When I was listening to Teaming with Bacteria today, they were trying to talk about the rhizofactory, sorry,
Rhizophagy cycle.
Thank you. That was something that you could, again, culture specific towards cannabis. You know what I mean? So why would you want to disrupt? I mean, even they were talking about tilling to the soil. In fact, that was bad. You'd be better off planting right next to that one and then jumping off the root zone that was already established. So, why tear up the batches and make it more, you know what I mean? Why not more worms? I mean, why?
Well,
We're
it's like
talking about you guys are talking about, I should clarify,
so
developing super deep systems that work in symbiosis.
It also
With,
comes down,
and
it also comes down to type of amendment.
you're also looking at when you top dress, you're working it in. So you're disturbing the top part of the soil anyhow. Okay. Rubisco helps kind of break things down a lot faster. And Rubisco comes in when things are tilled a lot better than when they're not tilled. When I'm trying to get, like, if my soil's compacted, I definitely need to till it to loosen it up. I need to get something else in there, like lava rock or something really porous, to get down in there. If I have to destroy, the problem is we continue to till. If you till once or twice, you're not destroying everything 100% because things are still going to live. It's about some of the colonies you're breaking up and disturbing them, but doesn't mean you're killing everything off. So as you're tilling, you're kind of still mixing things up. And
so it's a sign of overcompaction. Is it just, runoff, absorption? You know what I mean? How much is coming out? I mean, basically, how much is coming out, overwatering, it's cocoa, you only water until you see a little bit come out the bottom. You know what I mean? Organics, maybe not. But
when I'm watering my air pots, for example, if they're dry, the first watering, it's going to run through all the dryness until the water starts to absorb like cake. And then after I do a quick watering and it absorbs, I can then water more because now everything's starting to absorb. It's like that water barrier. It needs to be broken on a lot of stuff before it absorbs. And so using like saponins and things like that help with that. The plants really, and how do I want to describe it? It kind of really just helps the water more absorbable in a sense.
And let's remember in the scope of this conversation that environment dictates gene expression. So like, as we start to get the soil to go, it helps the soil to facilitate, right? And also remember when we talked, episode 1 or 2 maybe, we talked about the different spheres of soil, right? The detritosphere on top, the agrosphere with all that aggregate in it down below. It was the porosphere in between those two is the smaller balls, right? And then the rhizosphere where the root meets the soil. And then the drillosphere where the worms run through the soil, right? So there's all these pieces to consider in this whole process.
But yeah, Eagle, compaction can be totally solved by how the soil or the media is absorbing the water. And sometimes they can become, almost like hydrophobic, where it's like almost repelling the water. So like a sponge, if you just took a dry sponge and you threw it on a bathtub, it takes it a minute to like soak in, you know what I mean? And it's kind of similar where it's got to have that ability, but really in a sense of a living soil, you shouldn't really ever want to be to that point, The idea would be to kind of maintain a moisture level, because the biology is what's forming that hydrophobic layer. To my understanding, when the environment dries out, they start to form these like waxy cysts over their bodies. So then you're starting to try to do that. But the sign of compaction, or how you would tell, is the way the media is absorbing the water.
Wouldn't better ways of like compaction just be loosening them few layers and kind of putting rocks or something in there to kind of aerate and then keep the microbes and everything, the fungal, everything that's going on in the soil complete.
Right. So what I was talking about though with the fiber size is it'll respond a lot different. So that's something to plan on if you're building a soil to be long term. It's something you want to plan on, because it will seem to be more aerated at first, and then it's going to kind of compact down. So it was just a observation. You were saying why I ever got rid of the soil, and that was one reason why, because they did kind of just turn into like a hockey puck almost.
Can you put red flags in the soil that would necessarily act as signs of compaction?
Yeah, root zone.
Rocks and shit like that push their way through the soil through, tightening and hardening. So could you put things in the soil that, if you've seen pushed to the top, that you would know that lower layers were in fact super
perlite?
Fuck perlite. Perlite. Oh, come on, man. Not perlite.
Perlite rises to
I'm
the
with you.
top.
Fuck perlite.
When a lot of the perlite's washed out, you won't see anymore because as you're watering it goes away. Like we're not
No,
remixing the
perlite never
perlite.
goes away. It's always there. It's always there.
Oh, I appreciate you guys for bearing with me. I really do. Medically fit, you seem like you're frustrated with me tonight.
Not at all. There's a lot to your understanding, and a lot of it's just the willing to listen to the conversation, because a lot of people don't want to listen to the conversation. A lot of people, oh, they're talking living organics. I'm this type of grower. I'm not going to listen to the conversation. When if you actually open your ears and listen to what the conversation about, you pick up information that we're discussing. Like how much information can you discuss growing in hydro or cocoa? I mean, honestly, I don't hear a lot of them discussing information like biology. I mean, they might talk about, oh, I use this or that.
Yeah, definitely all the innovation happens on the organic side for sure.
Made me feel so much better, organically fit. I do that with my dogs all the fucking time, and I feel so much better tonight because I relate 100%. And again, I want you guys to understand. You guys got to bear with me, but this ain't about me. This fucking isn't about me. This was an effort to kind of teach and help other people understand organics as well. So bear with my questions, but pay more attention to their fucking questions. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to help. So don't get fed up with me, medically fit.
Oh, I'm not. Not
Keep
at all.
hanging out. Keep doing what you do, brother. Come on.
Oh, no, I love you, Eagle. Like I understand. Like you're trying to have an understanding of this conversation, and sometimes we're getting a little deep on the conversation.
But don't let it get dumbed down. That's what I'm saying. You know, if I'm fucking confused, just mute me.
Well, if you're confused, then some of the audience is confused, and that's where we gotta help you because you're asking the questions from the point is I don't understand. Help me understand, so we can try to get the people to understand what we're discussing, why we're discussing it, trying to help them look for some research. Right?
I think you're doing an excellent job as a host and drawing us out with excellent questions, Eagle. So keep up the great work. And there's no question that's too stupid or small or smart or anywhere between. Like for real, man. Like we can all learn from it. So let's all learn from it. So keep teasing it out.
Wow. I just think, well, I appreciate you guys 100%. So I just don't want you guys to take tonight. Tonight we did get a little. You guys, everybody took looked like they walked away, took a little express break there for a second.
Oh, I'm dealing with puppies and dogs and barking at everything, and I'm like, I'm trying to do a live show here. I don't really care to have the whole background noise of dogs like barking their heads off.
I'm just rehydrating, popping edibles, and taking the supplements.
You know, and I appreciate. I got to give you guys credit, man, as we all talked about before the show. You know, I thank you guys sincerely. I've said this many a times, but not just the knowledge, but as we talked about, we all kind of come sliding in tonight. You know what I mean? We all got 9 to 5s. We all got fucking real life that calls. And you guys took the time to come fucking hang out and fucking be patient for the most part. And I did appreciate you biting your lip there, medically fit. I know sometimes it can be hard when you're trying to spread a deep message and somebody's kind of slowing it down, throwing a little bit of an anchor in. But you took it well, my friend. I do appreciate your time 100% because you have taken your time out of a busy schedule to fucking come hang out and try to teach some people. And I didn't mean to slow the pace.
Oh, I just look at this as like this is me hanging out with my friends for the night, and we're just having a conversation about how we cultivate, and we got people watching and listening and asking questions, and that's what I enjoy about it. That's what I enjoyed, like when I was in the Bracing Organic show on Thursdays. It was like a big hangout session with all of our friends, and we all come hung out and smoked weed together and bullshitted and chat and asked questions, and that's what made it enjoyable. Like it's not just about us, it's about everybody that is a part of this. Like at one point I seen like 75 people watching the show. I don't know how many he's watching now, but like that's a small community in itself that we're all hanging out together, and I enjoy that. So Eagle, I enjoy being a part of this, and I'd love to always help you out, so no worries, brother.
I enjoy you guys' passion, man. That should you guys the way you guys talk about organics, bottom line, lights people's passion to want to follow that. I mean, you've been doing this a very long time. Smiley's been dumping and looking into, information for a very long time as well. And you guys still do it with a smile, you know what I mean? And show it with a whole lot of passion and love. So, it's awesome to see that you guys are still as fucking passionate about learning and passing it on many years into it. Cheers to you guys, man. Seriously.
Cheers. Eagle, I couldn't think of a better way to spend a Friday night than this. This is great to me. This is the most relaxing Friday night I could have, talking about weed and organics. Like, dude, this is fucking awesome.
That was a good time, man. Appreciate it.
It's evolving. It's evolving. I think we should touch base a little bit in the week and decide what we want to talk about a little bit more. You guys kill it. You guys, I gotta give it to you though. You guys, 3 weeks in a row, fucking ready, set, go. You know what I mean? Zero preparation, organization, other than we're gonna do this Friday. Smiley didn't even know about this shit until last night and shit. So, with that being said, you guys have absolutely fucking nailed this shit. You know what I mean? A lot of, again, I've talked about this very adamantly behind the scenes. It's very easy for in the past, and I've seen this, for a lot of shows to go, okay, this is what we're going to talk about next week. Ready, set, go. And fucking come back and fucking with your cliff notes and fucking act like the expert. But 3 weeks in a row, no notice, zip, zero, none. You guys come on and just fucking nailed it. Not even knowing what the fuck you're going to talk about. You guys are honestly great sources of what's being said. This isn't being rehearsed. You know what I mean? You guys walk the walk, talk the talk. And if I could listen to anybody and take advice, it's from great people like yourselves. And that's on a serious note. So again, I appreciate you guys, all you guys bring to the table, 100%. And I very much look forward to see where this goes. And I'll do my best. You guys have my back. Honestly, I promise here, as this goes on, I will try to organize this shit a little bit better. Come to the table a little bit more prepared. Because you guys do strike ideas in me to look deeper and deeper. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? There's a lot to be pulled out of the soil that teaches us lessons in life. So below, so above. You know what I mean? And there's no harm in that. I find lessons everywhere that relate directly to life. And I find a lot in the soil. And I've only opened up that journey through people like yourselves. So, hell yeah.
Oh yeah, man. I'm not trying to pretend to be an expert at it by any means, and I'm not. Like Medically Fit said, if you want to be the expert, then you go to college, and then you do have to know all those big words, and you have to understand them, and you know what I mean. That's what that's all about. But you can go and listen to the same information and bring concepts away that you don't necessarily have to memorize all the big words, right? But you can understand the concept of what was going on there, you know. So.
Well, you can even buy books like Matthew Powers. He's got some great books, like Jeff Lowenfeld's. He's got some great books. Like, there's a lot of information that you can even
We've
buy
got
the
a lot of these great folks in the closet.
And hey,
we could have these people come hang out. I have a lot. All these people we've had touch base with the show at one point of the time, and have already kind of recently seen what's going on, and have Nick said he would be dying to come on. NV at one point said he'd be wanting to come on. There's a lot of people that want to take part in this conversation. So this is just kind of getting started, really.
well, let's think about how we can systematize that and integrate guests in a way that we can keep a conversation flowing and not end up interrupting each other, because I see that happen so much.
Topic related guests. It's that easy, boys. But again, we've come up on 9 o'clock. I say we do kind of touch base in the next week or so, kind of decide what we want to do with this next episode, because this isn't about me. How the speed I want to take it, the simplicity, it's all us. It's all about what you guys want to put forth, what they want to hear. That's what should dictate what goes on here. And again, I can't underline enough. Thank you, boys, for being patient as fuck with me when sometimes stupid, high, tired questions come out of my mouth. Because, again, we've all worked fucking probably 10 hours today. A joint and a slow down. You shot that one over my head. Can we repeat that? We'll come. So just kind of, again, thank you, boys, for being fucking patient, and I hope you guys come along for the next one.
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure. Always fun hanging out with these guys.
Thank you, Smiley. Much respect, brother. Anybody else? Don't forget, shout outs, where to find you guys. You want to lay that down right quick? Please. You guys do shit other than here.
So good, man.
I'm on Instagram. That's it. Medically Fit, and YouTube, Medically Fit.
On YouTube, the Pharmacy Seeds Agriculture. And what else? I'm on Spotify, a podcast called Comrades at Farms. New episode coming out on that. Yeah, that's it. I don't know if you heard me before, but Pharmacy Seeds Network, FARMACY, as in Let Food Be Thy Medicine, is the YouTube channel. Well, that's it. And thanks everybody who came and joined and watched and listened and chatted. And
I'm sorry, Carlton. That is mine. Totally, that cuts you out. I have to be muted. That's my bad, man. I was just like it is on the screen, Smiley_garden on Instagram, or smileys.angels on Instagram is the genetics and breeding projects, and smileysangels.net is the website.
Thank you guys very much for tuning in. I appreciate all you guys, and I look forward to the future. That being said, most important thing in my book, don't forget to do something nice for somebody. Random acts of kindness do save lives. And with